So I'm Peter. I just gave a talk on the AI networks. I worked at NVIDIA. My function is mostly architecture. Previously at Facebook, I worked on the deployment operations, automation, software.
Hi, my name is Sergey. I'm tech lead for Arista, working with hyperscalers, and sometime ago worked with Peter as well.
Hi, I'm Dane Jackson. I work at Cato Networks. I'm Director of Global Professional Services.
My name is Kacprzynski. I'm Director of Network Engineering at WOW. So take care of the core network for regional ISP. Also organize this thing called CHI-NOG here. So just a couple things.
My name is Alexis Bertholf, and I'm a technical evangelist at Megaport.
Perfect, thank you. And thank you, Tom. Tom literally just found out he was doing this 2 minutes ago. So just to kick things off, the first question that I kind of had, and the way that we'll kind of run the format is if you'd like to answer the question, then just grab the mic and feel free to answer the question. We'll just try and fill up as much, as much time as we have here. But just to start things off, how do you stay current with networking technologies and with everything evolving so fast? What resources and everything?
Okay, I'll take a step. In the past, it was much easier, I would say, as in like the industry was more narrow. You just read Cisco updates, Cisco news, or like blogs. If you back then, I even used to blog myself a while ago. These days, I rely a lot on the publications, right? So at NVIDIA, it's easier for me because there's a lot of people do research who always share papers, always preprints. There is no like even like conferences. But I always track two conferences, SIGCOMM and SDI, right? Because they mostly publish the cutting-edge research in networking, OSDI on systems research as well. So that gives you an idea of cool stuff coming up maybe in 5-6 years. But then the rest is, I'll be honest, mostly like people send me links and I read something or send people the links. And news updates, like I read like stuff like Y Combinator, Hacker News a lot, for instance, to get stuff out. Anyone else?
I think I would share, work in the lab, work on new things. Hardware is expensive, obviously, but a lot of times you get access to cloud. If you have an employer that has an AWS or an Azure subscription, it's can be relatively cheap to spin up a Palo firewall, FortiGate firewall. A lot of these big boxes that cost thousands of dollars, you can spin them up, have a test plan. What do you want to accomplish? Spin it up, run it for a couple hours, costs you $5, $6 to run it, run your plan, shut her down. That's pretty cheap to do. You can get a lot of really great experience for next to nothing. You don't have to buy the thing. You don't have to run it at your house. You don't have to have that power bill. You don't have to have a big rack of equipment anymore. You can get access to basically everything you want, full licenses for next to nothing. And bluntly also, if you really want to have that lab rack, okay, cool. Go to eBay. Cisco 2900 router costs $50. MikroTik router, you don't need a very big one. Got a lot of features on that. To me, BGP is BGP. When I see it on your resume, if I'm looking at that and I'm trying to hire somebody, if you understand how AS paths work and how routing works, I'm not that worried about where you learned it. If you learned it on MikroTik or not, that's fine with me.
So for me, this is actually a question I use in my interviews, so it's funny to be on the other side. But so obviously you can do books, training, classes. There's a lot of that. I'll probably tell you a different angle of this, and this is kind of being part of communities, right? Being part of organizations like this, but also volunteering, right? Volunteering for program committees. I could give you an example. Volunteering at NANOG, you see a lot of content, a lot of presentations. Some of that comes through, some of it doesn't, but you see all these ideas people have. You see them kind of early on. So that exposes you to a lot of things that what I would consider, what are the blind spots? The things we know that we don't know, those are in our view, and sometimes we get to it, sometimes we just don't want to know. But highlighting the things that are blind spots, we just don't know, we don't know about. And that's where I think exposure to being in program committees, volunteering to these organizations, you get exposed to that. And then the other advantage of that is you get to work with some amazing people that you find out what they're working on. that will expose you to things, how to do things differently, or how their organization does. A lot of times when we work in the same place, we all learn the same things, the same systems, the same network. But it's when we venture outside of that island, that's when we see other technologies, other ways of doing things, and what else everyone else is thinking about.
Just to piggyback on that, I think going to events like this, I mean, at least for me, I'm still relatively early in my career. And so I feel like when I come to events like this, I learn something new almost every time. And even if some of it is over your head, or a lot of it, if you can take one thing that you can relate to and just dig a little bit deeper on, like the hollow core fiber, that was really cool. I didn't know that existed. And so if you can find one thing, whether it's in a LinkedIn article, in a presentation at a NOG, in a presentation with a vendor, and say, hey, that element was really interesting, I'm going to do 10 more minutes of Google research on it, you'll remember it better.
I'll probably sum up, because all of these ideas that everyone just shared makes a lot of sense to me, and I'm trying to replicate them on my own. But I will probably add that as soon as you get in those ideas, you need to spend a lot of time and effort to actually dig into them deeper. So I'm just trying to catch up on social media, would it be chats or just, I don't know, LinkedIn or like rabbit hole on Twitter or something like that. And then choose something and just dig into it, spend time and try in the lab if you can. And that kind of makes sense. And just every 3-4 months, you can say to yourself that, yeah, that I've learned something new.
That's actually a good segue, and I'm going to skip around on my list a little bit just to make things a little more interesting for you all. But how do you balance specialization, like you said, of digging deep into one particular area with being a generalist? Because at the end of the day, if you walk into an interview and you don't know, you may know BGP inside and out, but if you can't say anything, speak to OSPF with any kind of detail, that may get you eliminated in the from a candidacy perspective. So how do you have that, maintain that balance, I guess?
I'll take that one first, because it reminds me of my early career interview for network engineer in some company, and they were asking me questions about the Active Directory. And obviously I wasn't able to answer some of them. Some of them I couldn't even understand what they were asking. But it's more of like T-shirt approach, I think, for me, where you're trying to cover at least basics in a wide in a wide way, and then dig deeper into be subject matter expert if you want for yourself. That's the only way. And with time, you will start to forget things, or things will evolve, and you will need to forget things so you can have more capacity to learn something new. But it's kind of constant struggle, and also it's part of the fun as well.
I'll kind of take the opposite direction that you went. I came from Active Directory and systems administration and wanted to go into networking more, so I was more of a generalist and wanted to specialize in networking. And that was kind of a challenge for me because I needed to get deeper into an area that I had knowledge I was pretty skilled in. I think you kind of need to figure out what do you enjoy, because honestly, if you wake up every morning and you enjoy what you do, and you want to go to work and you want to work on it, you want to tackle those challenges, you want to find new things, you want to gain new knowledge, you'll be more motivated to continue to do what you do, to continue to keep up with the industry, because this industry is changing every day. There's always going to be new things. There's always going to be more to learn, more to work on. There's a reason why we're all here. There's a reason why you all chose to come here today. So I would say, as far as trying to figure out what do we do about generalism versus specialist, it's kind of your call. Choose your own adventure, figure out what motivates you. If you want to be a generalist, awesome. Go to LinkedIn, look at the jobs recs out there. There's tons of generalist opportunities. If you want to be a specialist and you want to be the BGP VXLAN person, there are job recs out there that are just VXLAN only recs. But it's kind of your call. But I just encourage you to pursue what you love and do that.
Anyone else?
So, I'm guilty of asking SPF questions in the interviews, which was, I think, now a bit silly. Like, type 5, type 5, 7 LSAs, all this stuff. But it was also part of a background test of community. Do you belong to this group, right? Because people at my circle back then would be like all about this stuff. Now I'm generalist. Sometimes, or very often, I miss those specialized days because you feel more satisfaction going deep in some topic. So one recipe against this is, I learned from my manager today, is pick up a topic of a week you want to dig deep into with your teams. Let's say most of my work today is reviewing some stuff, review this, review that, but you can pick up some topic you want to understand better and meet people, ask more questions, and do something on your own, your research on your own, to model something, like simulate whatever. It gives you, this short satisfaction of knowing something deep, even though you're no longer, like very deep of an expert. But also, it's pretty natural that almost everywhere, as you progress up in your career, you become a generalist because you have no time, to stay deep. People expect you to do more stuff, right, at a higher level. But that cure, picking up a topic of a week, I think was very helpful for me, to stay somewhat motivated to do stuff.
Well, let's go on to the next one. So, what technical skills do you find most network engineers lack that have created advancement opportunities for yourselves?
I'm going to be that guy. Automation.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just got to say it. I think, if we go back in time 5 years ago, 6 years ago, I would have said cloud knowledge, comfort with working in Azure, AWS, GCP, those sorts of areas, even VMware. Today, it's automation still. Sorry, I just got to be that guy.
Interesting. So there's a comment, I feel troubleshooting is extremely unique. You'll be surprised, like at any scale, troubleshooting always comes to some beardy guy, whatever, not guy, biased, who knows the stuff and can sit down and just pursue this issue relentlessly, like, bisect something. This is surprising how little automation exists in troubleshooting, like how many things still come down: packet dumping, tracing, pinging, bisecting. Maybe it will change with AI. I doubt it, because a lot of these things are about just things that are really hard to automate, right, sometimes. And the automation, I think, this interesting trend right now. Recently, I was just talking to someone here. I had to debug something, and I had to write a bunch of tools from the scratch. And I was too lazy to use something stock, so I used like coding agent to generate a bunch of code, which worked pretty well out of box. Like write a ping mesh server and the client, run them, process data, build the graphs, which took me maybe like an hour. Like when I did this at Facebook first time, it took me a few weeks to write all this stuff from scratch, right? So there's the scary thing that AI might, not scary, maybe actually positive, replace this skill set. But also, be frank, all the code I generated was a throwaway. I wrote it, I used it, get some results, and forgot about it. I think it's buried somewhere now. So that skill, I think it's pretty common now. Using the AI agents to do something becoming more and more important. I think it has limits, but it's been extremely helpful when you need to do something quick and dirty, especially.
Yeah, that's interesting to me, because like it's 2025 and we're still struggling to automate configuration and troubleshooting. That's
It's bizarre.
a whole
Yeah.
different story.
Yeah, even at any scale, still people like, oh, I think was this talk. Sorry, interruption. Before, someone was talking about, I think Darren, about this red button and dry run button. So one of the outages I know about happened pretty big outage. People pressed the dry run button and it didn't do dry run, actually did actual run and drained the whole network. So it was pretty bizarre, Trust into this dry run is also pretty low. You have special green button, red button, and very green button, something like this. Dry run,
Very
something like that.
I think troubleshooting is an interesting one that'll be growing over time. So it's kind of the one behind the curtain that's going to start showing as we become more comfortable with automation, as we become more comfortable with AI, and things just working. And having those skill sets are going to be extremely valuable. cloud, it just works, automation, it just works. So that skill set, I would encourage everybody to definitely keep that skill sharp, because that's going to be very, very important. When the outage happens, we don't know why, the automation's not working. Someone's going to need to open that box up and figure out which gear broke and put it back together again and get it working. So.
One thing I'll add to that, and this is really great skills that definitely people need. One area I would add is kind of advice to think about your domain that you're in. So let's say you're routing and switching, and this is your domain. Go to the edge of it and see the kind of the adjacent areas, right? And just learn a little bit about it. So like routing and switches, go to the optical side, see how does that work. Go to the system side, go to the cloud side, go to the development side. So just being able to not just, hey, I'm only focusing on networking, but also learn some of the skills that your neighbors, your colleagues, or your peers are working on, and it's going to make you a lot more successful to work with them versus you're the network guy or lady, and everyone else just does their thing. It'll help you build those bridges to communicate better and make your job a lot easier.
I will double down on this point, because from my perspective, it makes a lot of sense, because you can learn automation if you need to, and like you cannot learn troubleshooting apparently, but being able to communicate well and run through your own created documentation will help a lot. And I think that's one of the skills I see, one of the skills which is lacking, especially for new starters in the industry. So I would say it's important to also develop your soft skills there as well.
Yeah, it reminds me of a saying I heard. It was actually at a DevOps Days conference probably a decade ago now, and I'll adapt it to the network engineering world, but there's two types of people. Those that have brought down the network, and then people that are about to take down the network. And so that's the reality that we live in. So troubleshooting, you just got to have it. Switching gears a little bit, but how valuable has mentorship been in all of your careers? But more importantly, how did you find good mentors? Because I'm sure everyone at some point in time has had someone that just gave them a chance or gave them some advice. So how do you find those people?
Go first. I think especially, I guess it depends on what company you join, but a lot of times we're assigned mentors when we first join and when we first start a position. So number one, taking advantage of your assigned mentor and actually getting to know them. But if you're looking for a mentor on your own, I think a huge piece of it is advocating for yourself and your work, because if you're doing a good job talking about what you're doing, more often than not, someone who's 5 steps ahead of you will come and knocking on your door and say, hey, I see what you're doing, that's really great, how can I help, right? Because as we grow in our careers, there's a sense or a feeling of needing to give back or wanting to help someone who was in our shoes 2 or 3 years prior. You don't always need a mentor in the C-suite or some CIO or CISO who's super, super technical or senior engineer. Sometimes you just need someone who's 2 or 3 steps ahead of where you currently are. And looking for those people, I think, is where I've found the most success, because they're a little more relatable and they've just recently been in your shoes.
I would say that the best mentor for me is not actually a technical person, but rather person on, let's say, on the sales side, or somebody with soft skills, because they can give you a different perspective on the same topics that you're trying to think through yourself, and that it gives a lot of perspective and great help. So I would encourage to look for people who kind of adjacent to your direct area of expertise, but also can look at it from a different point of view.
Okay, so first of all, notice that in general, mentors is somebody who is supposed to be senior to you, but senior people are always very busy to give you time. So there's two things I noticed worked out for me well. One is you look to be in a place where you can role model someone. I mean, not copy, but copy some patterns of a behavior, like which was, it depends, right? If you're in a company where you're more senior, maybe there's no one to copy, but usually there is someone who exhibits some behaviors, be it leadership or operational. You want to copy, and if you see them being successful. I had these people at Microsoft, somewhat at Meta. Meta was a bit more difficult because it was very flat, and everyone was just more like a peer early on. NVIDIA as well. You see people, how they do things, how they communicate, how they think about things. That's useful to model, right? You see the advantages. But mentoring-wise, finding friends at work was essential, right? Very often it's more about just you have the same problems, you vent out, you kind of try to listen to each other and brainstorm how to move forward. Like at Microsoft, I had a small circle of people. We get out, get drinks, and just complain a bit about the work, but think about how to move forward. So this was helpful, build connections and understand how people see you and other people and how you move forward. A lot of it is very social, right? It's not technical at all. In the big companies especially, most of the things are about interactions, not about your coding skills necessarily, even though it also matters, right? But I'll be, funny enough, I never found this formal mentorship to work out. Like you send some mentor with hey, how's it going? And then it doesn't work. But that role modeling, like copying someone's behaviors to an extent, I think you find inspiring, and making friends at work, right? Hanging out after work and talking about stuff was very helpful.
I think you kind of beat me to my point I was going to make there. Looking back on my career, I don't look back and see a lot of formal mentorship where somebody was explicitly going, I'm your mentor, you are my mentor. But then when I really start to think about it, I see all these little bits where somebody was my mentor. They did some little thing for me, or I did some little thing for somebody else in their career. Mentorship does not need to be this very official, I'm going to tattoo the word mentor on my forehead and mentoree on your forehead, and we have this relationship that will be forever. It can be very simple. It can be very informal. It can be for just a fleeting moment where you ask a question and somebody else answers the question and gives you some advice, or just somebody walks by and sees you struggling and they just say, hey, how about you try it this way? Or somebody just happens to say something out loud and you hear it and you overhear it. It doesn't have to be some major thing, just a willingness to hear, a willingness to remember, a willingness to take something and consider it. So, don't look at it to be necessarily, some massive thing. We talk about it, and it can be too, depending on what firm you're in, what company it is. So it can be more than that also, and I'm not afraid to say, consider that also. But don't also forget the little parts.
Yeah, I think the thing that I did that is just mentorship in general. Like it could be, and in a lot of cases, it should be a two-way street too, where the mentor and the mentor is also the mentee. So, and don't feel like a mentor, it has to be somebody above you or something. Like having a mentor that you can bounce the ideas off both ways, that's a really productive thing to have. Before, we've got a couple minutes, actually 1 minute. Does anybody have any last questions for our panel here before we wrap up for lunch? Go ahead.
Talking to microphone, but you guys have microphones. I would say one question I have is, how do you break out of the stereotypical norm of being a network engineer who sits in a corner with a propeller on your head and gets fed underneath the door, and breaking out to be more social and to get out in front of people to ask those questions and to be exposed to the folks who you would like to learn from or model or replicate some of their knowledge? Because I think a lot of the time you talk to a lot of network engineers and they're not that outgoing, flowing type of person you're talking about. It goes to the soft skills and the communications and documentation, all that stuff. So let's hear on that one.
You need to talk to people. Number one. I think getting out of, I think back to like one of my first internships, and I'll go into this later if I end up presenting, which we're still unsure of. But I worked in aerospace, and so I was shoved in a cubicle and basically like working on all of these Excel sheets, and I got so bored that I would wander around the little cubicle farm I was in and just pop into people's cubicles and say, "What do you do? How long have you worked here? What was your career like?" And you can do that across all different functions of an organization. I mean, the network touches every department, whether it's engineering, accounting, finance, whatever it happens to be. And just getting to know the people in your organization better so that you're a friendly face. You're not just someone on the other end of the phone when they open up a ticket, right? They know that you have roles and responsibilities, and also challenging yourself to pick up small talk or small conversations in the break room, in the elevator, in line at lunch. It doesn't have to be a formal thing where you reach out to someone on Slack and ask for 30 minutes to do a coffee chat. You can just start talking in the elevator instead of staring at your iPhone or staring at your feet. And that'll go a long way too.
I'll just say one quick. I know there's a lot of engineers that like I don't feel comfortable, and I don't want to do it. So then you can think of it as like, okay, then if I don't want to do it, why would I do it? And it's like, but you know what? You can learn a lot from the other person. The other person can help you, learn something new or help you with a problem. So it's like, if you're just into technology, they could help you with technology. So think of it as not the end goal of, hey, let's just socialize. Think of it, hey, I'm going to learn more technology. I just have to talk to people. I'll force myself and I'll talk to them. It's okay.
I'll probably say that it was hard to break out of that habit to just be to yourself and just do your job properly and be mostly antisocial rather than social. But I think what helped me is understanding that if I'm working on a project, my responsibilities needs to be end-to-end. So I need to focus on the end result, and then the result will depend not only on me but also on other teams. And that's what actually created the need to communicate with other people, and that's how I think I was able to break out of it. Maybe that is useful, maybe not.
What helped me was moving to a builder model. When you do stuff, software engineering. When I joined Facebook, I was network engineer formally. I think the biggest thing that helped me was moving to software, starting to write code, and showing ideas to people. Because when you can execute, people kind of naturally tend to talk to you and work with you because they get excited. So you don't have to force it. Say back when I wanted to do something and build something cool and show it to people, and if you can show progress, people start to gather around you. And also, be honest, I was very antisocial back then. Don't go to parties, events, anywhere. I would meet people in the kitchen mostly when I go run for a coffee or something. But since they see your results, and this was helpful at Facebook back then. It was internal workplace, internal Facebook to communicate your ideas. You can just show them there. I think it's one of the problems. If you're in a company which has this communication silos, it's really hard to connect with people, right? So pick up places where you can broadcast your ideas in some way. It doesn't have to be Facebook, right, workplace, but something where you can show, hey, I'm doing this is working, who wants to talk about it? Because very often, many of us are introverts, and talking in a chat or in a group is easier than in person or going to a party. I just quickly said, I thought going to with events was a waste of time. After work, I just kept working, but still somehow managed to build connections in between.
And I would add here too to say, have confidence in yourself. Everyone in this room is mastering a domain that is unbelievably difficult and challenging. Just even trying to explain what you do for a living and what you work on in networking is hard, let alone doing it for a living. You guys are, men and women here are just unbelievably talented. You are masters of something that is hard. You can do this too. If you can do networking, you can do literally anything. So just go for it. Trust yourself. You'll be okay. I promise.
Well, with that, we'll wrap it up. And if anyone does have a good way to explain what we do, come see me at lunch. So I've been trying to figure out how to explain that to my wife and kids for years now. But thank you to all of our panelists. And just to close that out, that last part out too, is a great way is if you do want to push yourself, submit an abstract to the next CHI-NOG, and then you can hold yourself accountable for, hey, I want to do this, I want to give it a chance, submit an abstract. That's a great way to get involved. With that, thank you to all of our panelists. Really appreciate you guys. We threw this together last minute, so I greatly appreciate everyone stepping up and helping out with this session here. It was really great. But lunch is upstairs, right? So just go up the stairs or up the elevator, and we can go grab lunch. And we'll start back at what time? 1:45. Thank you.